Pretty soon we're going back to Zendikar, the fan-favorite chaotic plane of adventure, a high density of modern staple cards, antediluvian cosmic horrors from beyond the veil of reality. So before we get back to wondering why they aren't reprinting fetch lands and standard sets, why don't we take a moment to cover the story of the plane and what exactly happened with those cute little grey things. This is the entire Eldrazi storyline in 15 minutes. Part 1, 3 against 3. The story begins several millennia ago with two ancient planeswalkers, Nahiri the Lithomancer and her sort of dad, Soren Markov. The Eldrazi have just forced the pair to retreat to Nahiri's home plane of Zendikar when Ujin shows up and he's like,
"Hello to my ancient ally Soren Markov, with whom I have a long and storied past. Those three Eldrazi sure are tough customers, aren't they?"
And Soren goes, "Ah yes, my big dragon buddy who I have known for many centuries. Get your eyes checked, old man. There are more than 3 Eldrazi, there are thousands of them." And Ujin is like,
"No, you stupid fucking idiot. You absolute ignoramus. You total fucking moron. There are only 3 of them, and I have named them Ulamog, Kozilek, and Emrakul. All the little ones you see are just extensions of their will."
And Soren says, "Very cool, but what are we gonna do about it?" And Ujin says,
"I'll tell you, but you're not gonna like it."
So here's where I should explain what the Eldrazi actually are. They are cosmic beings made of pure aether native to the Blind Eternities, which is the space in between the planes. You can kind of think of them more like a force of nature than an actual sentient being with any needs or desires. The creepy alien-looking things are like the digestive organs of the Eldrazi. They run around and they eat things, and since they aren't actually separate entities at all, the Scions eating is the same as the Titans themselves eating. Even the Titans themselves are not the Eldrazi's true form, though. The things we see as being Ulamog, Kozilek, and Emrakul are, as Ujin puts it, like a person sticking their hand into the pond. The majority of the body exists outside of the pond in the Blind Eternities. The Scions are like that person sticking a second hand into the pond, or in this case several thousand other hands. We see them as being a separate entity, but they are attached to the same body. So Ujin explains how you can ask the Eldrazi to stick their hand into the water, and then once you've done that you can nail the hand to the wall, not killing them, but rendering them unable to leave and consume other planes. So the 3 get to work. Nahiri uses her Lithomancy to create the Hedrons, the dragon scrolls his runes on them to give them power, and Soren supervises. The Hedrons lure the Titans to Zendikar, and when they arrive, the 3 planeswalkers activate the network, tethering the invaders to the plane and diffusing their mana into the air, rendering them inert. The lock which seals the network is named the Eye of Ujin for reasons which aren't immediately clear, but Nahiri describes as being an inside joke. The Eye of Ujin can only be opened by the presence of 3 planeswalker sparks and Ujin's invisible ghost fire. The Eye also doubles as an interplanar speed dial, just in case the Titans get out and they need to summon each other to fix it, or maybe someone's having a birthday party. Soren pieces out, Nahiri buries herself deep in the ground and takes a little dirt nap, and Ujin goes off to try and pull this exact same gambit on his asshole brother. Part 2, Chekhovs Demon. Obnixilis has been recently turned into a demon after picking up the Chain Veil, so he heads to Zendikar because he thinks he might be able to undemon himself. He didn't account for Nahiri waking up, absolutely bodying him and jamming a Hedron right into his forehead, which causes his planeswalker spark to go out and his wings to fall off. Part 3, the Leaky Pipes. 5,000 years after Part 1, deep below the mountains of Akum, Ulamog silently exerts his influence onto the people of the mountain. Occult forms worshipping an imagined god and performing rituals they themselves do not understand. The cultists manage to loosen the bonds holding the Eldrazi just enough for the brew to spill out from the mountain. Fun fact, this is why there are vampires on Zendikar. Those cultists were physically warped into becoming the Eldrazi's slaves, and the little hooks on their shoulders are so their masters can pick them up easier. Nahiri wakes up from her nap once again because she can feel the Eldrazi wiggling around. She hits the panic button to summon Soren and Ujin, but neither of them answer the call. She fixes the problem herself, but starts to wonder if maybe her cute goth pseudo-dad is dead and that's why he didn't answer, so she goes to look for him. Part 4, Soren is a jerk. Nahiri arrives on Innistrad and finds Soren and asks him why he didn't show up when she used the Eye. He explains that his shiny new chunk of moon silver probably put her email in the interplanar spam folder. Nahiri is furious as she realizes Soren doesn't actually care about her or Zendikar, and he only agreed to help the first time to save his own home. The two get into a fight, but it's interrupted by Soren's goth GF, who distracts the Lithomancer long enough for Soren to shove Nahiri into the Hell Vault. Part 5, the Dragon Scroll. 1,000 years later, Nicol has found Ujin's alien prison, so he dispatches Sarkhan Vol to sit in the Eye and wait. Bolas then influences some dude named Ramaz into influencing Chandra into stealing the mysterious Dragon Scroll from a museum on the plane of Kefalai. The owners of the Dragon Scroll hire the Infinite Consortium, which is sort of an interplanar black market / crime syndicate run by Tezzeret, to retrieve the Dragon Scroll. The Consortium sends Jace Beleren to follow her to Ragatha. Once there, he takes the scroll and wipes her memory of its contents, but lucky for her, she'd already made some photocopies for her to study. Chandra realizes, however, that the real function of the scroll is part of the physical object, not just the things that are written on it, so she goes back to Kefalai and steals it a second time. This time the authorities send the bounty hunter Gideon Jura to go get Chandra and bring her to justice. He captures her and brings her to the relevant authorities, but then he feels bad about it and rescues her. He reveals to Chandra that the hidden map on the Dragon Scroll is for Zendikar, so that's where she goes. Meanwhile, Jace is studying a copy of the Dragon Scroll himself when Garrick kicks Jace's door in. After a brief fight, Garrick also tells Jace about the map, leading Jace to Zendikar as well. Part 6. Zendikar and Worldwake. Chandra arrives on Zendikar and convinces a vampire named Anawan to help her get to the Eye of Ujin. He tries to kill her and steal the scroll, but out of nowhere, Sarkhan appears and bonks him over the head. Sarkhan leads Chandra the rest of the way to the Eye, and once inside, he turns into a dragon and tries to kill her. Meanwhile, Jace is hot on her trail, and he finds the recently bonked Anawan. Anawan tries to kill him, but Jace bonks him over the head with some mental magic and makes Anawan lead him to the Eye. Once inside, he finds Chandra and Sarkhan having a go at it, and he joins in on the fun. During this fight, Chandra channels the power of the Dragon Scroll for the very first time, which unleashes Ujin's Ghost Fire. The Eye absorbs the fire and all three are knocked unconscious. The conditions for unlocking are met and the Eye is unsealed, releasing the Eldrazi from their prison. Kinda. We're not actually at Rise of the Eldrazi just yet though, that was Worldwake. Pandora's box has only been loosened, allowing the brood lineage to be set loose on the world, but Ujin still has one last safeguard in place that prevents the three titans themselves from escaping. Part 7. Nissa is the worst. Soren appears on Zendikar and finds Nissa and Anawan duking it out. Anawan just cannot catch a break with planeswalkers, and Soren uses his vampire magic to enslave Anawan and make him lead him to the Eye of Ujin. Soren also drags Nissa along because he needs Nissa's magic to fix the Hedron network and reseal the Titans. After a long and arduous journey, they arrive at the Eye and Soren explains exactly what she needs to do. Instead, she completely ignores him and breaks the final seal. On purpose. She wasn't tricked by Bolas or anything, she knew exactly what she was doing. Nissa was willing to let the Eldrazi escape and kill untold millions because she thought maybe they would leave Zendikar once they were out. So now we're at Rise of the Eldrazi. At this point, Soren gives up on dealing with Zendikari women and goes to see if he can find his old buddy Ujin. Part 8. The 6 years between Rise of the Eldrazi and Battle for Zendikar. On Innistrad, Liliana wanted to kill Gristlebrand to get out of her contract, but couldn't because he was trapped in the Hell Vault. She bullies Thalia into busting open the Hell Vault, which frees Nahiri. Nahiri returns to Zendikar and sees the Titans destroying her home. Furious that Soren had trapped her in prison and then allowed the Eldrazi to be released, she vowed to get revenge, so she goes to prepare for Shadow's Block. Magic 2014, Chandra finds Ramaz and kicks his ass. Did you know the Duels of the Planeswalker games are canon in the story? Because apparently they are. In Theros Block, Kira encounters the Eldrazi and runs off to get help, so she runs to Theros and steals Thassa's magic carving fork. In Magic 2015, Jace is worried about Garrick's curse because having an insane murderous planeswalker on the loose is just bad news for everyone, so he briefly pops back onto Zendikar, finds Ob Nixilis, steals his forehead rock, and then jams it into Garrick to stop the curse from getting any worse. Hansa Tarkir, Sarkhan goes home to Tarkir, and Ujin's ghost leads him to a dead body. The power in the Spirit Dragon's bones force Sarkhan to travel back in time where he saves Ujin after he's been mortally wounded by Bolas. In the new timeline Sarkhan created, Soren arrives at Ujin's new healing cocoon and pops it open, letting Ujin no longer be dead. Part 9. The Battle for Zendikar. Gideon was trying to follow Chandra so he could simp some more, but instead he gets caught up in the first onslaught of brood flowing onto the plane. Jorian tells him she thinks ley lines might have something to do with the Hedrons and fighting the Eldrazi. Gideon knows who knows a bunch about ley lines, so he goes to Ravnica, where he interrupts Jace's date with Liliana and asks him to come back and help clean up the mess he made. Gideon and Jace arrive back on Zendikar and Ulamog is rampaging across the continents, but Kozilek and Emrakul are nowhere to be seen. Jace heads straight to the Eye of Ujin and he runs into Ujin. Ujin's like,
"Hey, if it isn't one of the Chodes who opened my Eldrazi box."
And Jace is like, "Hey look, it's the idiot who made a prison that could be opened by accident, so how do we kill Ulamog?" Ujin says,
"The Eldrazi are not living creatures, they are literal forces of nature, essential to the cosmic balance of the multiverse. Their inexorable forms only tangentially perceivable to those who exist in this material plane. Destroying them may upset the balance of our existence in ways impossible for mere mortals to understand."
And Jace is like, "Yeah, okay, Boomer, so what are we gonna do about it?"
"Just stick some rocks in a circle and it'll stop."
Just stick some rocks in a circle?
Yeah, just stick some rocks in a circle.
So that's the plan. Jace goes back to Gid and he's like, yeah, we just gotta stick some rocks in a circle and then we're good to go. So Gideon, Jace, Nissa, Munda, Kiora, Tazri, Draena, Jory, and Noyan lure Ulamog into the Sea Bear circle and bind him to the plane, immobilizing the Titan forever. Just kidding, Obnixilis sees his opportunity and takes advantage of the network the allies have made. He channels the Hedron's power into himself, which reignites his spark and destroys the stasis trap. Then, in a moment of pure spite for the thousands of years he was trapped on Zendikar, he reaches into the briny depths and summons Kozilek, who'd been trying to take a nap right underneath them this whole time. Gideon, Nissa, and Jace try to fight the demon, but he effortlessly defeats all three and takes them back to his cave. Part 10, Oath of the Gatewatch. Chandra finally shows up to the party and follows Ob to his dungeon. Inside, she finds the demon torturing the three planeswalkers because he's really just that evil. She gets them out of their bondage, and with the four walkers' powers combined, they overpower Obnixilis, forcing him to finally planeswalk away. The four of them have a moment, and they realize the real liberation from a demonic torture chamber was the friends they'd made along the way, so they decide to form a supergroup that protects the multiverse from interplanar threats. Now that Kozilek is also running around doing his thing, the Gatewatch rules out plan number 1 of trapping them, and instead opts for plan number 2. Just kill him. Going back to the hand metaphor from earlier, instead of nailing the hand to the wall, the plan is to pull on the hand, bringing the entire body into the pond, and then maybe they can kill it or something. So Nissa weaves the ley lines, binding the Titans and pulling their true form into the physical realm. At this point, Chandra gets a grand idea and sets the ley lines on fire. The two Titans explode and Zendikar is saved. Ujin flies in and he's like,
"Good job, guys, you just killed God. I bet that won't have any lasting consequences. So anyway, can you go look for Soren and Nahiri, because they should really be here. We all agreed that we would be here and they're not here, so I don't know what's up."
Part 11, the shadows over Innistrad. So Jace goes off on his own to look for Soren. He heads to Innistrad, but things aren't going super hot over there. People are losing their minds left and right, and Archangel Avacyn is in the process of killing everyone. It's almost like there's some sort of shadow over the plane. Jace starts his search by checking Markov Manor, but the mansion has been mysteriously blown the fuck up, and all the vampires have been killed by being shoved into a wall. He finds a mysterious journal written by Tamio, and with its help he follows the mysterious cryptolith to Nephalia Drownyard, where there's some mysterious stuff going on. Jace heads to Thraben to investigate Avacyn's cathedral. Tamio shows up to help him, and then Avacyn shows up and tries to kill them both before Soren shows up and kills Avacyn. Avacyn was the only barrier standing between the plane and the weird thing at Nephalia from happening, so as she dies, Emrakul is pulled in from the Blind Eternities. Nahiri had created the cryptolith to manipulate the plane's ley lines, drawing Emrakul to Innistrad so the Lithomancer could get revenge for what happened to Zendikar. Emrakul warps everything around her, where Ulamog devours the physical plane and Kozilek seems to warp time and space in his wake. Emrakul changes life itself, warping the horrors of Innistrad into even more horrifying monsters bent to the Eldrazi's unknowable will. Soren declares Innistrad a lost cause, and instead of fighting Emrakul, devotes his time to waging war against Nahiri with his family of vampires. The two get into a long fight, but without his Goth GF to save him, Nahiri earthbends Soren into a wall. Jace quickly gathers the Gatewatch, and they attempt to do the same thing they did to Ulamog and Kozilek, but when Nissa tries to summon the ley lines to bind the Titan, they're too twisted and she can't work up enough power to make it happen. Liliana shows up and saves their ass with her zombie army long enough for them to make a plan. Tamio gets an idea to trap Emrakul in the moon, since the moon is made of silver, just like the Hellvault was. So they weave a grand spell, and Emrakul is drawn into the silver moon of Innistrad, trapped to never return. And that's all for now. I imagine I'll probably have to expand on this at the end of September, but one last thought though is that the Gatewatch may have doomed the entire multiverse by killing the Eldrazi. I'll put a link in the description if you want to read more, but basically there's evidence the Eldrazi are not just glorified cows that munch on whatever pasture is readily available. They could be part of a life cycle of planes themselves. Kind of like worms, they eat dead or dying planes and let new life blossom from the soil. If that's true, then that force of the multiverse is now well and truly dead, so it probably doesn't even matter. Good job, Gatewatch. You may have ended the life cycle of the multiverse.